My name is Joe Peroni, and this is the Rise Above Project. And today I want to read a story called The Bridge. It was written by Rabbi Edwin Friedman. And in this story, it's going to highlight a dilemma. And then each person who hears this can come up with their own conclusion about what the message actually will teach you. So we're going to go over about 10 questions at the end of this story. In the beginning, just to give you a thought, we can look at how much responsibility should you have for other people? So let's start with that question. Here's the story. There was a man who had given much thought to what he wanted from life. He had experienced many moods and trials. He had experimented with different ways of living, and he had his share of both success and failure. At last, he began to see clearly where he wanted to go. Diligently, he searched for the right opportunity. Sometimes he came close, only to be pushed away. Often, he applied all his strength and imagination, only to find the path hopelessly blocked. And then last it came, but the opportunity would not wait. It would be made available only for a short time. If it were seen that he were not committed, the opportunity would not come again. Eager to arrive, he started out on his journey. With each step, he wanted to move faster. With each thought about his goal, his heart beat quicker. With each vision of what lay ahead, he found renewed vigor. Strength that had left him since his early youth had returned, and desires, all kinds of desires, reawakened from their long dormant positions. Hurrying along, he came upon a bridge that crossed through the middle of a town. It had been built high above a river in order to protect it from the floods of spring. He started across. Then he noticed someone coming from the opposite direction. As they moved closer, it seemed as though the other were coming to greet him. He could see clearly, however, that he did not know this other, who was dressed similarly, except for something tied around his waist. When they were within hailing distance, he could see that the other had about his waist a rope. It was wrapped around him many times, and probably, if extended, would reach a length of about 30 feet. The other began to uncurl the rope, and just as they were coming close, the stranger said, "Pardon me, would you be so kind as to hold the end of the rope for a moment?" Surprised by this politely phrased but curious request, he agreed without a thought. He reached out and took it. "Thank you," said the other, who then added, "2 hands now, and remember, hold tight." Whereupon the other jumped off the bridge. Quickly, the free-falling body hurtled the distance of the rope's length. And from the bridge, the man abruptly felt the pull. Instinctively, he held tight and was almost dragged over the side. He managed to brace himself against the edge, however, and after having caught his breath, looked down at the other dangling, close to oblivion. "What are you trying to do?" he yelled. "Just hold tight," said the other. This is ridiculous, the man thought, and began trying to hold the other in. He could not get the leverage, however. It was as if the weight of the other person and the length of the rope had been carefully calculated in advance, so that together they created a counterweight just beyond his strength to bring the other back up to safety. "Why did you do this?" the man called out. "Remember," said the other, "if you let go, I will be lost." "But I cannot pull you up," the man cried. "Well, I am your responsibility," said the other. "Well, I didn't ask for it," the man said. "Well, if you let go, I am lost," repeated the other. He began to look around for help, but there was no one. How long would he have to wait? Why did this happen to befall him now, just as he was on the verge of true success? He examined the side, searching for a place to tie the rope, some protrusion perhaps, or maybe a hole in the boards, but the railing was unusually uniform in shape. There were no spaces between the boards. There was no way to get rid of this newfound burden, even temporarily. "What do you want?" he asked the other hanging below. "Just your help," the other answered. Well, how can I help? I can't pull you in, and there is no place to tie the rope so that I can go and find someone to help me, to help you. Well, I know that. Just hang on, and that will be enough. Tie the rope around your waist, it'll be easier. Fearing that his arms could not hold out much longer, he did tie the rope around his waist. Why did you do this? He asked again. Don't you see what you have done? What possible purpose could you have had in mind? Just remember, said the other, my life is in your hands. What should he do? If I let go, all my life I will know that I let this other die. If I stay, I risk losing my momentum toward my own long sought after salvation. Either way, this will haunt me forever. With ironic humor, he thought to die himself, instantly to jump off the bridge while still holding on. That would teach this fool. But he wanted to live, and to live fully. What a choice I have to make. How shall I decide? As time went by, still no one came to help. The critical moment of decision was drawing near. To show his commitment to his own goals, he would have to continue on his journey now. It was already almost too late to arrive in time. But what a terrible choice to have to make. A new thought occurred to him. While he could not pull this other up solely by his own efforts, if the other would just shorten the rope from his end by curling it around his waist again and again, together they could do it. Actually, the other could do it by himself, so long as he, standing on the bridge, kept it still and steady. Now listen, he shouted down. I think I know how to save you, and he explained his plan. But the other wasn't interested. You mean you won't help? But I told you I cannot pull you up by myself, and I don't think I can hang on much longer either. Well, you must try, the other shouted back in tears, because if you fail, I'm gonna die. The point of decision arrived. What should he do? My life or the other? And then came a new idea, a revelation so new, in fact, that it seemed alien to him. I want you to listen carefully, he said, because I mean what I'm about to say. I will not accept a position of choice for your life, only for my own. The position of choice for your own life, I hereby give back to you. What do you mean? The other asked, afraid. I mean simply, it's up to you. You decide which way this ends. I will become the counterweight. You do the pulling and bring yourself up. I will even tug a little from here. He began unwinding the rope from around his waist and braced himself anew against the side. You cannot mean what you say, the other shrieked. You wouldn't be so selfish. I am your responsibility. What could be so important that you would let me die? Do not do this to me. He waited a moment, and there was no change in the tension of the rope. I accept your choice, he said at last, and freed his hands. The end. So obviously he died. So what does this story mean to you? Let's ask some questions. So number one, how would you get the man hanging from the rope to take responsibility for himself? Now, I thought about this for a while, and I am also, again, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm a personal trainer. So I have spent most of my life trying to help people. So if the question is, how can you get people to take responsibility for themselves? Unfortunately, the answer is that you can't, at least from my point of view. You can't make people take responsibility for themselves. The old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. If you take it a step further, you can lead the horse to water. And if you can't make it drink, you can still put the horse's head underneath the water if you really wanted to. But for a lot of people, that wouldn't make them drink, that would make them drown. And that's just the sad truth of it. So, what's a better answer here? I think what you can do is make it as difficult as possible for somebody to survive comfortably. And then they're going to have to decide at that point whether the pain of action is less than the pain of inaction. I see this a lot in therapy. I've had people that absolutely refuse to do anything. They can live in a home or be homeless even. And if you try to encourage them to get a job, they'll still figure out a way to not get a job. They'll do everything possible. They'd rather beg for food or money on the side of the road than get a job. And so even at that stage, their life has not been hard enough for them to go and try to get a job. And so again, it's within the person. So in this scenario, when somebody finally lets the rope go, I think that's unfortunately the correct move, and I think that's what the rabbi was alluding to. Question number 2, how much responsibility does the man on the bridge have for the other? Probably none, actually, because the other person that was walking on the bridge handed him the rope and jumped off the bridge, thereby making the other person be responsible for their life, when in fact everybody's responsible for their own life. How much responsibility would you want to take for somebody? I think that depends on the person, but I think realistically you should be able to take as much responsibility as you can without putting your own life in jeopardy. Number 3, why is it so difficult to let go once we are experiencing rope burn? And that's a good question too. Why didn't this guy walk away immediately? Well, I think it's very difficult to walk away when you're a good person and you are taking responsibility for somebody. I also think it's difficult to walk away when you've invested a lot of time, effort, and some people invest a lot of money in somebody, and they want to see a good outcome, and it's almost like it's a failure for them to walk away. So I think that's why it's very difficult to walk away. And when he mentions rope burn, is because the other person is giving up a lot of themselves to help the other person, and it never seems to be enough. Number 4, what is higher value, self-sacrifice or achieving your own salvation? Again, very individual here in terms of what point of view do you have. Are you an individual, or do you see yourself as more of a collective? Do you care more about a team, a family, a culture? And in this sense, again, I think this person was going to better his life by trying to get to this new thing on time. Why would he self-sacrifice that much to ruin his life for somebody that doesn't really care about their own? Again, that's a choice everybody has to make, but I agree with this person's choice who let go of the rope. On the other hand, there are people who use that as an excuse to always try to help other people, and they make themselves out to be a martyr, and so therefore they can get some type of validation for being a martyr, and they do want to take responsibility for other people. Not always because that there are these great people that are trying to do good things for other people. It's because they don't want to take responsibility for their own lives, and so they're worried about everybody else around them. Number 5, why do the needy often get most needy when others around them are functioning best? Well, I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is opportunity. If a person who is very needy is seeing other people around them be successful, well, there's an opportunity there, so they can ask. In other words, if somebody's successful, they can say, oh yeah, I need some money to do this, I need some money to do that, can you help me? The opportunity exists, so they take it. The other part, and I think it's happens more often, is that many times a person's success will trigger the insecurity in other people around them. And so they will try to cause more chaos and confusion around a person who's successful to try to bring them down a little bit. I like to refer to crabs in a bucket. There are many people that I've trained, mostly women, when I do personal training. And a woman might come to me and they haven't trained in a long time or ever, and now they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s. They've been married for a long time, and their children or their husband expects them to be a certain way. And all of a sudden, this woman starts to gain some self-esteem. She starts to lose a bunch of weight. She looks better. She's getting a lot of attention. And what you'll see then is the people around, whether it's the kids or the husband, start to do everything possible to sabotage her. So they become more and more needy to try to pull her back into her usual place, because they don't want to see somebody do better. A lot of people, they just are very insecure and they don't want to do the work. When people around them become more successful or have an opportunity to be successful, instead of being very supportive and allowing them to do this, and I don't mean allow them because everybody can make their own decisions, but to make it easier for a person in their life to be more successful, instead of pushing them along and being supportive, they try to do everything to drag them back down to homeostasis. Number 6, why are the dependents so often calling the shots? I think it's because many times these people, because they don't take responsibility for themselves, they get really good at complaining and getting what they want by playing the victim to other people. And it's a very strong position to have. I would say in the last 10 years for sure, but over the last 20 years, being a victim is a superpower now in this country, and a lot of people are doing it because they complain a lot and they do end up getting what they want. Now, if you have a bunch of victims and a bunch of complainers and they start to end up being close to the majority or are the majority, then they end up winning. And then that's what happens too. So yes, you can gain a lot of power by being a victim, because in some ways, although living like a victim doesn't make you successful, in some ways it's easier because there's nothing expected of you. You don't have to expect anything of yourself, and it kind of just makes life simple. You don't have to go through the trials and tribulations of trying hard and failing a lot. You can just fail your whole life through, but you don't think of it as a failure because you're literally trying not to push yourself to be any better. So I think that's a big reason why the dependent call the shots. I also think that there's a lot of people around dependent people that classify themselves as good people. And the term good also means help everybody, even if they don't really want to be helped. Number 7, if the man on the bridge never got away, could the man hanging onto the rope be accused of murder? Well, in this day and age where everybody seems to be litigating and not taking responsibility for themselves, I would imagine that person would try to accuse the person, or the family would accuse the person of murder. This happens all the time. It's like if somebody does drugs and they OD, they want to go after the person who made the drug. We see this a lot, even with the opioid crisis, epidemic. It's like we want to blame the maker of the drug. Okay, but you could line up drugs that could fill up my whole house 10 times over. You can actually make it seem like it snowed 10 inches of snow and use cocaine all over my house. And it would never affect me because I would have no thought to do it. So why would we complain and blame a person who makes something or even markets something? It doesn't make any sense. Again, we live in a country right now where we don't want to take responsibility. So in some ways, yes, if you let go of the rope and the other person died, the person's family would probably come in and try to sue the person for not holding on to the rope long enough. That's probably what would happen, although that would be 100% wrong. Number 8, how does the bridge get played out in families, schools, religion, therapy programs, and maybe even welfare? I could talk about this all day. I don't want to make the show too long. But let me just say, as a therapist, Let's break it down to like three sections of people. Let's say we have the rich, for example, the very well-to-do. What they can do is if they want therapy, they can pay for it, and they do. And when we're looking at therapy sessions here from a therapist that has gone to school for many years to be educated, we're looking at somewhere between maybe $150 to $300 an hour for that service. It's a lot of money, but richer people can afford that, no question. Now, when we're looking at the middle class, that's very difficult because it kind of prices out a lot of very good people that are working hard. And the middle class is the one that does most of the work in this country. They pay most of the taxes in this country, and yet they can't afford things because nobody gives them a break. And so I feel very bad for the people in the middle class. Now, working with Medicaid people, nothing wrong with them, they're good human beings, but they get those services 100% free. Now, it's not like you have a therapist that charges $150 to $300 an hour over here and they don't do Medicaid. They also have the same license and they can charge that same money. But if you're working through Medicaid, what happens is that people who can't afford enough things in their life, and so now they get their mental health for free, they are literally getting $300 an hour therapists for free. Now, I don't mind that on the surface because I want all people to have help. But on the one side, we have poor people getting therapists for free, and the middle class can't afford that therapy. So I think that's really unfair. So how does the bridge get played out? Almost all the time, and I have colleagues too, we've talked about this, and this happens on a regular basis. If you have a Medicaid client who's not paying anything for their service, most of them could care less about that service. They don't really hold it in high regard. Even though they might need that service, they don't really respect it because they're not paying for it. What are the chances of getting a Medicaid client to show up on time for a therapy session? A lot less than someone who's paying $300 an hour. And what are the chances of getting that Medicaid client to actually be there for the session? I don't know the percentage. I don't even want to give one here on the show. But I can tell you, it's rare, if ever, that if somebody's paying between $150 to $300 an hour, that they're not going to show up with a no call, no show. That almost never happens. A middle class person, even more so, because that money, that hits them hard. And they want to show up for therapy. They're using their hard-earned cash, and they want help. They always show up, and if they don't show up, they will call and to make sure that they cancel. Medicaid, it's a shot in the dark. A lot of times they don't show up and the therapist doesn't get paid. They get paid $0. So you can be a therapist that has 4 clients in a row, Medicaid, none of them show up, you get $0 for the first half of your day. That's just the way it works. So how does the bridge get played out? Well, there's a lot of people that don't want responsibility in their life, and then they continue to act like everybody owes them something. In other words, help me, help me, help me, but they don't do anything to actually move the ball forward. Continuing. If someone said, hold the rope or I'll jump, what would you do? Well, what would I do? I would obviously hold the rope because I think that's your first thought is to save a life. You would do that. But once it gets to a point where your life is in danger, I don't think anybody should expect you to move forward with that. What are some other questions that I would throw in here just to go along with how does the bridge get played out in families and actually in our culture in terms of welfare and therapy programs, even in religion, schools, how does it work out? One of the things I would say is, okay, number one, is a person truly needy, or are they just lazy? Or they just want other people to do the work? Or are they just acting like victims? Are they actually trying hard? That's important, because a lot of people don't try hard. I have plenty of Medicaid clients over the years, and when you try to move them into getting a job, many of them don't want a job. And again, I'm very liberal, but I could understand the Republican or the conservative side saying that you should cut welfare off on people because it makes life too easy for them. Now, it doesn't seem like an easy life, right? Because they're still living poor. But many people would still rather choose that poor life than go out to be an asset to society by getting a job. Why? Because they don't trust themselves to hold on to a job. So if they get a job, they're going to lose their benefits. So they would rather make less money and live their life off of taking money from the taxes of the people who do work so they can sit around and just go to a mailbox and get their money. They would rather do that than go out and get a job because they don't trust themselves to hold that job. And because they have low self-esteem, everybody in our country has to pay for that. Again, I know that sounds really conservative of me, but I just call it like I see it. Well, because it's true. What else? Are the people receiving benefits, like in this case with the rope, is the person who is receiving the help and asking for the help, are they actually grateful? Are they just demanding more and expecting more, but not giving anything? Are they acting narcissistic and entitled? Are they completely innocent here, or are they guilty of causing their own problems? Now, in this particular story from the rabbi, the person who jumped off the side of the bridge and told the other guy to hold the rope, he caused his own problems. But I also see this on a regular basis. People do cause their own problems. They'll act like they get into a barroom brawl or a fight in every bar they go to, and they don't seem to understand why they're the one involved in the same thing. Or is it that every bar is bad? Or if that's a bad thing and you can't handle yourself, how about maybe you don't go to a bar? You know, maybe you go somewhere else. So I think that's a very important part here, is that if you want to help somebody, you should. But is the person you're helping, are they going out of their way? And are they making life decisions and choices to put themselves in bad positions all the time? I live in Las Vegas. It's okay to give somebody money if they need money, if you want to do that. But what if every single week or every 2 weeks when they get paid, they go down to the casino and they gamble their paycheck away? Should you be helping them all the time? Because they are making a life decision to do something that is extremely not productive, let's say, and they're putting themselves and their family in a bad position every week on purpose. Should you bail them out all the time? I don't think so. Do we do this with poor people? Do we bail them out? I think we do. And then we make it so they don't have responsibility. To be fair, do we bail out rich people a lot? Yes. We bail rich people out all the time as well. And I also think that that's wrong. Again, I think it's the middle class over and over again that seems to bear the brunt of all the problems, or at least many of the problems. So I hope you enjoyed that story. And again, you don't have to agree with any of my opinions. I actually don't want you to. I want you to come up with your own thoughts and opinions. Again, this was by Rabbi Edwin Friedman, and the name of the story was called The Bridge. Hopefully this has been valuable to you. My name is Joe Peroni. This is the Rise Above Project. Please subscribe and tell a friend. Thank you.